Welcome back to your 2020 grant planning. So today we're going to do a recap of what we have talked about so far. So we started out asking, why would you want to plan your grants in the first place? And the big reason for that is to avoid these cycles where you drop everything and focus on your grant writing, and then you need like a recovery period before you can move on to the rest of your work and then writing another grant, because it's never just one, right? You're always this is part of your career. As one of my students says, I'm going to be writing grants until I retire or until I die. So I just want you to think about that and think about how important it is to have a plan for your year and what you want to accomplish. So that's where we started, was why you should do this in the first place, and it's to avoid that that drop everything and burn out and recover cycle of grant writing. We want to make this a sustainable part of your research career, because it's something that you are going to be doing until you retire or until you die. So think about that, and think about the reasons that you might want to take some time to plan your grant writing. So we talked then about setting a goal for the year. Where do you want to be at the end of 2020? What do you want to have accomplished? What grants do you want to have submitted? What do you want to be waiting for in terms of results? We also talked about the difference between a goal and a project in terms of having that sort of friction that comes in when you are setting a goal. We talked about that in terms of, an Olympic athlete going after a gold medal, and how many pieces of that are outside of the athlete's control, but the training and the process that you go through is totally within your control. So I told you, when you're setting your goal, to have that in mind, but then to just forget about it when you are actually doing that training part for you, which is the writing and the execution of the project. So we talked about goals. We talked about non-negotiables. So what is already in your calendar this year? What can you not remove from your calendar? What is absolutely essential as a responsibility and as a commitment? And some of those might be professional commitments, and some of them might be personal. Some of them might be things that you don't want to remove from your calendar, and those are really important to consider as well, again, because we're trying to make this a sustainable part of your professional life. So non-negotiables is the next planning piece that you need to think about. Then we talked about getting picky. We talked about not being able to do everything on your list, and being really selective about what you focus on. The goal that you initially had in mind might be way too big to accomplish in one year. All of the various projects that you have on deck just might be too much. So you have to be really selective about where you want to end up. And that is to conserve your energy, and again, to avoid that sort of burnout cycle that you might be going through, and to just think really carefully about how you want to spend your time. So goals, non-negotiables, getting picky. Then we talked about, what does success look like? How will you know that you're on track to meet your annual goal? And so we talked about quarterly milestones and making sure that you have those signposts in your year that help you figure out whether you're on the right track. So that was the next phase of the planning process. Then we talked about setting quarterly themes as a way to help you achieve those milestones. You might have a few different projects happening during the quarter that you're in, but having a theme that can unite those projects might be a helpful way for you to think about how you're getting your work done. We also talked about creating monthly projects, so dividing your quarter into months and focusing on maybe a maximum of 3 projects that you would work on during a month. And that doesn't mean that those projects are going to be finished during that month. It just means that those are projects that you are working on. We talked about creating activities. Those are those sub pieces of a project that need to happen for that project to be completed. We talked about a project having a start date and an end date, and those activities are what make up that project. So we're just, as you can see, we're just kind of going from broad to specific. We're getting really detailed in terms of the level of planning that we're doing. We talked about creating 2-week sprints as a way to create some momentum and keep you moving. That is something that I would say is maybe a bit more advanced when it comes to the planning process, but if that's something that you want to try, it's definitely worth giving it a shot. We talked about protecting time in your calendar and being really enforcing that, and how important it is to keep your word to yourself and to create some boundaries around the work that you do so that you can actually get it done. Because it's so easy when you're thinking about grant writing in particular, it's important work, but it's not necessarily urgent until it is urgent, right? Until a deadline is coming up. And so it's really important to take some time to devote to that consistent writing. It's going to make things a lot easier in the long run if you build it into your schedule in whatever way makes sense for you. And the way to do that is by protecting your time and scheduling it in your calendar. We also talked about the Sunday review, the review and plan. So taking a look at your week, how it went, and what needs to happen next week to keep you on track. So again, we've gone from annual to quarterly to monthly to weekly. And then, of course, we have daily planning. And I wanted you to think about this a little bit differently. Instead of having a 27-item to-do list, what are your daily top 3? What are the 3 things that absolutely have to get done today for you to feel like you've had a successful day? And I know that you're probably going to say, I need to accomplish more than just 3 things to feel like I've been successful, but I really, really want you to reconsider that attitude. Think about it in terms of the 3 priorities that absolutely must happen today, and anything else is just icing on the cake. See how that goes for you. See how efficient your time becomes when you think about it that way. We also talked about what happens if you fall off track. And those adjustments that you need to make. And that's why those review sessions come in really handy, because it helps you to recognize how close you are to hitting those milestones. It helps you with that self-awareness around what you need to accomplish and when, and how to handle it when things do go sideways. So that is another piece of the weekly puzzle. And we also talked about reviewing every quarter. So that review and plan that you do every week also comes into play on a quarterly basis. So again, we talked about those milestones that you need to hit every quarter to make sure that you're hitting your annual goal. The way that you can keep on track with that is to do a quarterly review and figure out how close you are to your quarterly milestones and any adjustments you need to make for the next quarter so that you can hit your next milestone. So that is your recap of your grant planning. It's a lot to take in. If you do want to do it all in a workbook, I have one for you. There's a link underneath this video. You can download the workbook and it walks you through the entire process. I really recommend that you give that a try. It's a lot easier when you have it in front of you on paper to sort of map out what it is that you need to do and when. So there you go. That's the planning process. If you have any questions, feel free to pop them in the comments underneath this video, and I will be happy to answer them for you.